Welcome to a deep dive into the world of background music for business. It's something you requested, right? Figuring out how this whole industry works and how to pick a provider.
Absolutely. It's more complicated than most people realize.
We'll try to unpack it all. The tech, the music formats, the legalities, and then we'll actually compare the top 5 providers out there.
Should be interesting.
Yeah, did you know there's such a thing as a music license for businesses? Most people don't even think about that.
It's true, and it's where the creative side of music meets the business side. Gets tricky.
Definitely. We'll get into the some surprising details like how AI is being used to pick music and how much you could be fined for using unlicensed music. Hint, it's a lot more than you probably think.
It's quite a journey from those old systems with their limited playlists to the AI-powered platforms we have now with literally millions of tracks.
Oh yeah, I remember as a kid going into stores and it seemed like the same few 80s pop songs were always on repeat. Like, is this all they have?
Right. Well, so before we jump into comparing specific providers, let's break down the core technology. How does background music actually get from point A to point B?
It's probably more complex than most of us realize.
Oh, for sure. It's like tracing the evolution of music delivery from physical media to the internet. We started with what were called store and forward systems. Think Muzak, they were basically just giant hard drives with pre-selected tracks.
Oh wow, those take me back. I can vaguely picture those. I bet it was a pain to keep the music updated on those.
Huge pain. Updating them required like swapping out cartridges or entire hard drives. Then came satellite streaming, and SiriusXM is still the main player in that arena.
Satellite streaming, that sounds interesting. I bet that's great for businesses in remote areas or if they have like super strict security protocols, no internet allowed kind of thing.
Exactly. It
Oh.
bypasses the need for internet, which can be a big deal in those scenarios. But nowadays, the most common way to get music is through internet streaming.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's probably the most flexible, right? But I'm guessing you need a really solid internet connection for that to work smoothly. What happens if the internet cuts out? Just awkward silence.
Could happen. We call that clipping when the connection drops and the music gets interrupted. Lots of providers are moving towards what we call hybrid systems now to deal with that.
Hybrid system, so like a best of both worlds thing.
Right. You get the flexibility of internet streaming with the reliability of local storage. So if the internet goes down, there's a backup music library ready to go.
That's smart. Keeps things seamless for the business and the customer. They probably don't even realize there was a glitch.
Hopefully not. So we've got the technology piece kind of figured out. But before we go any further, we need to talk about music licensing.
Oh, right. The legal stuff.
Yeah, this is where it can get tricky for business owners.
I bet. Most people probably assume that if they own a CD or pay for Spotify, they can blast it in their shop, no problem.
Nope, not how it works. Playing music publicly in a business is considered a public performance, and that means you need a license from the copyright holders.
So even if it's like generic elevator music, you still need a license.
Even that, copyright law protects all original music, and the fines for not following the rules can be massive. We're talking up to $150,000 per song.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah.
Suddenly paying for a background music service doesn't seem so bad.
Right. It's the price of peace of mind.
For sure. So these services, they basically handle all the legal stuff for you.
Yep. They have agreements in place with organizations like ACECAP and BMI that make sure all the music they offer is properly licensed for business use.
So we can relax knowing our tunes are totally legit. Okay, that's a relief.
Mhm.
Now let's move on to the fun stuff. Choosing the actual music.
Definitely. Lots to talk about there, and we'll get into it all after a quick break. All right, so now we know a bit about the tech behind it all and why licensing is so important. Let's talk about the actual music.
Yeah. The music is what creates the atmosphere.
Mm.
It affects the customer experience, right?
Mhm.
It helps you shape that vibe you want.
Exactly. And you've got options when it comes to the format, like how the music is put together. You could go all out and make custom playlists.
Curated playlists. That sounds like a lot of work, though. Can I even do that myself, or do I need to hire some, like, music expert?
Good question. You can definitely do it yourself if you want. If you've got the time, the musical knowledge, and a good understanding of your target customer.
I'm picturing myself spending hours scrolling through music libraries, trying to find the right mix of genres and moods.
Yeah, it can be time consuming. Luckily, lots of providers have their own pre-made playlists, curated by professionals for specific moods or industries.
Oh, that makes sense.
Mm.
It's like picking a pre-designed outfit versus making one from scratch. Both have their pluses. But what about keeping things fresh? Won't customers get tired of hearing the same playlist over and over?
That's where AI-generated stations come in. This is where the tech gets really interesting.
Wait, AI creating music? That sounds futuristic. How does that even work?
AI algorithms analyze tons of music data. We're talking everything from the tempo and the melody to the genre and even lyrical content.
So it's like a virtual figuring out the perfect tracks.
Exactly. You just give it some parameters like what kind of mood or energy level you're going for, and the AI does the rest. It can even adjust the music in real time depending on things like the time of day or how many customers are in the store.
Wow, that's pretty wild. It's like the music adapts to what's happening.
Yeah.
But what if I want something simpler and probably cheaper too?
Then you've got ready-made playlists and channels. Most providers have a bunch of these. They're organized by genre, by era, or even by activity.
So like if I have a coffee shop, I could just choose a chill cafe vibes channel and call it a day.
Exactly. Super easy and affordable, but it might not be as personalized as a custom playlist or an AI-generated station.
Right, makes sense. It's a trade-off like everything else. Okay, so we've picked our music. Now, how do we actually play it? What are our options for hardware and software?
This is where it gets even more interesting. We've seen a ton of innovation in music players recently, with options for every budget. We can start by looking at dedicated hardware players.
Dedicated hardware. That sounds serious. What's the benefit of going that route?
They're specifically designed for businesses. Super robust, reliable, and with more features than you usually get with regular consumer devices.
So like professional grade equipment. What kind of features are we talking about?
Well, a big one is local storage. You can store your music directly on the device so you don't have to worry about internet connectivity. Some players also have more advanced controls so you can schedule playlists or adjust the volume levels or even add in announcements or messages.
Oh, that's cool. Like a mini radio station. But I'm guessing those features cost extra.
They do tend to be pricier, yeah. But for businesses that really need reliability and control, dedicated hardware is probably worth it. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have player apps.
Player apps. That sounds more my style.
Mhm.
Is it as simple as downloading an app on my phone?
Pretty much. Most providers have their own app that you can just download. It's super convenient because you probably already have a smartphone or tablet.
Yeah, for sure. No need to buy anything new.
Mhm.
But are we sacrificing features and control by using an app instead of dedicated hardware?
There are some trade-offs, yeah. The apps are generally more basic.
So no local storage or fancy scheduling options, probably. But I'm assuming you can still do the basic stuff like change the volume and pick playlists.
Oh yeah, for sure. You'll also be able to access your music library, whether it's your own playlists, AI-generated stations, or those ready-made channels.
Sounds easy enough. But isn't there a risk in relying on your phone as the music player? Like, what if the battery dies or the internet connection drops?
Those are valid concerns. With an app, your music is at the mercy of your phone's battery and your internet connection. If either of those fail, the music stops.
Cue the awkward silence. Anything else to think about with player apps?
Security can be an issue. If your phone or tablet gets lost or stolen, whoever has it could control your business's music.
Oh, I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
Could definitely be a problem, especially for businesses that deal with sensitive information. Okay, so dedicated hardware players and player apps. What else is there?
We've also got web players, which are great if you're comfortable using a computer as your music source.
Web players, interesting. How do those work?
Easy peasy. You just go to your provider's website, log in, and you can access your music library right there. It's all streamed from the internet to your computer speakers.
So any computer with internet access can become my business's DJ booth. Sounds flexible. But what about sound quality? Are web players as good as dedicated hardware or even apps?
It depends on a couple of things, like how good your internet connection is and what kind of sound card your computer has. But generally, they can deliver pretty decent sound. Maybe not as good as dedicated hardware, though.
Makes sense. Are there any other pros and cons to using a web player?
Well, one good thing is that most providers let you use their web player for free as part of their subscription plan.
Oh, nice. So if you're on a tight budget, that's a good option. But I'm assuming there are some downsides too.
Yeah, just like with apps, you're completely dependent on a stable internet connection. If that goes down, so does your music. Plus, web players can use up a lot of your computer's processing power, which might slow things down.
Right, so if I'm running other programs on my computer, a web player might not be the best choice. Any other player options before we move on?
We can't forget about smart speakers. Devices like Sonos are becoming super popular.
Oh yeah, Sonos. They have that nice sleek design, and everyone says the audio is incredible. But are they practical for businesses?
They can be, especially for smaller businesses or places with a more casual vibe. Sonos speakers are easy to set up, they're wireless, and the sound quality is top-notch.
Yeah, all sounds good so far, but I'm sure there are some drawbacks too, right?
The price can be a bit steep, especially if you need to cover a larger space, and even though they are wireless, you still need a strong Wi-Fi network.
So if my Wi-Fi isn't reliable, Sonos is out. Anything else to keep in mind?
Security is something to consider. With Sonos, it's easier for someone to take control of the music compared to a dedicated hardware player.
So like a rogue employee could start blasting their own playlist. That could be a licensing nightmare.
Yep.
Definitely something. And it really boils down to what each business needs and what's important to them. But now I'm curious about the companies themselves. Who are the big players in background music? Who should I be considering for my business? Based on your source material, we've got 5 top contenders. SiriusXM Music for Business, Soundtrack Your Brand, Pandora. They've got 2 options, Cloud Cover and their partnership with Mood Media, and then there's Mood Media as a standalone provider as well.
Okay, those names ring a bell. But what makes them stand out? What are their strengths and weaknesses?
That's what we'll get into next. Get ready for a head-to-head comparison of these music giants.
All right, so we've talked about the technology, the legal side of things, and all the different ways to actually play the music. Now let's get to the main event, comparing those top 5 providers. Where do we even begin?
Well, we've given you the toolbox. Now it's about picking the right tools. Each of these providers has its own strengths, like a different personality. Okay, I like that. So let's start with SiriusXM Music for Business. What's their deal?
They're the reliable ones, been around forever. They're known for their really well-curated channels. So if you're looking for something simple, just set it and forget it. With good quality music in specific genres, they're a solid option. Plus, they have that satellite option, which is huge for businesses that are in the middle of nowhere or have, tight security and can't use the internet.
Right, that makes sense. Like gas stations or grocery stores where you want the music to just be there in the background. But what if I want more control over the playlist, more customization?
Then you've got Soundtrack Your Brand. They're the ones pushing the boundaries with technology. They have a massive music library, over 100 million songs. And remember when we talked about APIs, they're the only ones who offer that level of integration.
So for businesses that really want to personalize the music experience, like syncing it with their digital signs or creating different playlists based on the customer demographics, Soundtrack is the way to go.
Exactly. Plus, they're really strong on the AI side of things. Their algorithms can analyze your business data and even customer preferences to figure out the best music for your specific situation.
That's pretty impressive. It's like having a music consultant who knows your brand and your customers inside and out. But what about if I'm working with a smaller budget?
Now, then you've got Pandora. They actually have 2 different options. There's Pandora Cloud Cover, which is their standalone service, very straightforward and easy on the wallet, good for smaller businesses that just need something simple and reliable.
So it's like the basic option, but still a well-known name. What about Pandora through Mood Media? What's the difference there?
Mood Media has been around for a while, but lately they've been focusing on more than just music. Their partnership with Pandora is a more basic package, so it really depends on what Mood Media is offering and how much it costs.
Yeah, bundling services can save money, but you always have to look at what you're actually getting.
Speaking of Mood Media, they're on this list as a standalone provider too, right? They are, but like I said, they're branching out. They still do background music, but now they're really into what they call integrated sensory experiences. So it's music combined with scent marketing, digital signage, that kind of thing.
Interesting. So they're taking a more holistic approach, creating a whole experience for the customer.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It is. And it shows how important music is in creating a really memorable and engaging customer experience.
Right. It's not just about picking a music provider. It's about figuring out how music fits into your brand and how it affects the customer's journey. But with all these options, how do we decide which one is the right fit?
Well, that's where everything we've talked about comes together. We've given you the knowledge, the insights, the comparisons. Now it's up to you to decide what your priorities are, what your budget is.
Okay, yeah.
Like, do you want total control over your playlists? Then maybe Soundtrack Your Brand is the one. If keeping it simple and affordable is more important, then maybe Pandora Cloud Cover is a better fit. Or maybe you like the idea of Mood Media's sensory experiences. Each business has its own, sonic identity waiting to be discovered.
That's a great way to put it. So as we wrap up, What's the one piece of advice you would give our listeners?
Imagine you're walking into your business 6 months from now. What music do you hear? How does it make you feel? And more importantly, how does it make your customers feel? Let that guide you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Think about the overall impact you want to create. The right music can transform your space, make your brand stronger, and leave a lasting impression on your customers.
Exactly. It's about creating the right soundscape, something that reflects your brand and makes everyone who experiences it feel good.
Well said. So to our listeners, we encourage you to take a look at these providers, check out what they offer, and try out some free trials. Trust your gut and don't be afraid to play around until you find that perfect soundtrack for your business.
And remember, the world of background music is always changing, so stay curious, keep exploring, and never stop fine-tuning your sonic identity.
Great advice. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of background music for business. We hope you found it useful and inspiring.
Happy listening.